Welcome to Cadalyst Magazine's CAD Manager Chronicles with CAD management expert Robert Green. This episode is sponsored by DraftSite from SolidWorks.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the CAD Manager Chronicles. I'm your host, Robert Green. Along with Cadalyst Magazine, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this session. You know, I recently had to write my 500th CAD Managers newsletter. And what I thought that I would do is reflect one of the most common questions I get, which is what has changed in CAD management? And as I thought with how to answer that, what dawned on me is that perhaps the better answer is what hasn't changed in CAD management? What's remained constant? What types of tools and strategies can you use today that will always make you successful no matter what kinds of tools, CAD tools that is, that you might be using in your day-to-day workplace? So in this installment, I'm going to go over some of those CAD management constants, things that always seem to work, things that somehow don't seem to change. All right, let's go. There's a saying in French, and I'm sure I'll butcher this, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose, which basically means the more things change, the more they don't. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, certainly the software has changed. The internet has changed. The tools that we use, the cloud wasn't even there 30 years ago. So certainly things change, but people don't. People are the same as they ever were. We're still supporting production no matter what tool we use to do that production. We're still interfacing with IT. We're still facing problems with standards resistance. We're still facing problems with users focusing on a specific tool. This is a phenomenon I like to call tool worship. We still have the managerial disconnect, and that is senior management doesn't understand what we do. We still have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to build our core skill set so we can be a better CAD manager at all times? Now, these are the things that have remained constant, and what I'd like to discuss and analyze briefly on our talk today. So let's just jump right in. Here goes. The first thing is people, or CAD users, let's say in our context, is that CAD changes, but people really don't. And what I mean by that is a few of your users will be truly great. They'll be absorptive, they'll learn, they'll integrate new ideas, they'll innovate and help you be a better CAD manager. They're few and far between, but they're there. The vast number of people that you deal with are professional, but they're there to get a job done. They don't want to be the CAD manager, and they don't live their life for learning new CAD technology, and that's fine. They're professional, and this is the vast middle user base that we deal with. A few are problematic. These are people who simply won't follow the standards or are disruptive in other regards. However, almost all people are change skeptical. I count myself as amongst that. You have to show me why I need to change. And if you make a compelling argument, then I'll do so. Now, how do you deal with all of these realities? Let's draw a conclusion. Here's what I've always done. This seems to always work. I embrace those who I deem as being great. They have passion. I leverage that passion. I use them to help me develop standards, new tools, new customization. As I do this, I support the vast middle professional user base, and I challenge the problem cases to get better. As I go along, I remember that everybody is change skeptical, so I always try to explain what I'm doing to everyone. That way I can negate the skepticism. Now, the realities of how people are and the realities of how I've dealt with people really have not changed a bit in the 30 years that I've been doing CAD management. Let's move on. Production support. Now I'm going to ask a question. Why does the company hire a CAD manager? I mean, we never question this. We just say, I'm the CAD manager. We never say, why am I here? Why did they hire me? Well, they hired us as a CAD manager because work has to be produced and finalized, and CAD supports that objective. CAD produces the models, CAD produces the drawings, CAD produces the PDF files, CAD produces a lot of the work product that goes out of our building. Users have to use CAD we support those users and those CAD tools so that the work can get done. Our true value is in optimizing the processes. Now, we don't need to be dictatorial about what those processes are. We just optimize them. So what I have to realize as a CAD manager, and this has always been true, is that production is king. The only reason the company hires me is because they need to get production work done. That's why I'm there. Now, drawing a conclusion, realize that nothing else matters if production isn't getting done. So whatever else your focus may be, you have to make sure that facilitating production is number one. Everything else is in line after that. You have to make your CAD tools, training standards, everything that goes along with your CAD management job, you have to make it support facilitating production. Here's another thing that hasn't changed. Interfacing with IT. Here's the fundamental principle. CAD tools run on IT infrastructure. What do I mean by that? Well, CAD runs on cloud tools now. Of course, it's always run on workstations. Workstations have always been plugged into networks, even though the network now may be a VPN in the public domain internet, whereas in the old days it was simply a hardwired server-based infrastructure. But the point is, our CAD tools function and are at the mercy of the IT infrastructure. Therefore, my relationship with the IT department is crucial because without IT, my CAD doesn't run. So if my relationship with IT is good, life is good. Everything works. If my relationship with them is bad, then everything becomes problematic and slows down. My ability to work with IT is key to my success. And I would add that my level of IT literacy has always been important. It remains so today. In fact, it's probably more so today than it was back in the day. But your ability to understand basic IT functionality really is important, and your attitude is very important. If you're combative with IT, it's going to be a problematic relationship and everything's going to slow down. Now, if your attitude is solid and you're trying to do everything you can to work with IT and understand it more, then your attitude will be great, and that reflects upon your relationship with them. So how can I reduce the amount of time that I have to spend dealing with IT problems? Well, realize IT is a large determinant in my CAD quality of life. So I need to do whatever I can to understand IT better, to be more literate, and to develop a relationship with the IT person, not only the department, but the specific people inside the department, to smooth over these problems and hopefully be proactive so that I don't have IT problems in the first place. This has always been true. This has been true since the very first CAD network I ever managed. It's more so today. You're as good as your IT, so work on it. Here's another thing that never changes: standards and the resistance to them. Now, the logic behind standards has not changed, and here it is, simply put. Standards increase consistency. Consistency reduces errors. Fewer errors means less wasted time. Less wasted time means production speeds up, and faster production equals higher profits. Or put another way, in a very simple equation that everybody gets, time is money. So standards is literally about money. Now, this begs the question. Everybody has those users who refuse to follow the standards. So how do you deal with standards violators? Great question. One that I'm asked in almost any CAD management talk that I give. Here's the key thing, and this hasn't changed a bit. Standards resistance is not a technology problem. It is a psychology problem. Let me repeat that. This is not a technical problem. It's a psychological problem. What you do is you fight standards resistance with metrics like error rates, lost time, wasted money. Therefore, anybody who doesn't want to follow the standard is in essence saying, I want to have a higher rate of error, I want to spend more time, and I want to waste money. And it's really hard to defend that. Nobody can defend that. So make your argument about standards monetarily based and do it based on metrics. You'll take the personal psychology out of it. You'll make it all about finance. Psychology is the way you win this argument. Tool worship. This is a special topic as far as I'm concerned. You know, there's an old saying that when the only tool you own is a hammer, the entire world starts to look like a nail. Users like their familiar tools. That is, they own this hammer. They've owned it forever. They know how to use it. They love it. They're really not interested in using any other hammer but their favorite hammer. However, changing times have required changing tools. We're not using the same CAD tools we were 30 years ago, by and large. So users have had to change and update their skill set. Changing times require changing tools. We have to use the best tool for any given job that we're doing. This goes to production, right? You use the best tool to achieve the best results in production. This means we don't need to be married to any specific tools. We need to constantly be evaluating the best tool. And that's not only in terms of completion and lower errors, it also has to do with cost to the company, flexibility in licensing, all these other metrics. Let standards and best practices drive your tool usage, not what users want to use. One of my favorite examples is you have a new person come in and you have to train them, and the only thing they do is talk about, well, back at my old company, we did this. Back at my old company, we did it like this with XYZ CAD, or back at my old company, we used ABC BIM and we did it this way. A big part of me wants to say, well, why aren't you still working there? Why did you come here? But in reality, what they're doing is they're telling you what their favorite hammer is. All right? And it's your job as CAD manager to negate them from that tool worship. So how do you do that? How do you negate the tool worship? Here's the only way I found to do it. And again, this hasn't changed a bit. If we go back 30 years ago, somebody would say, well, I could do this on the drafting board easier. It was the same problem. The tool they worship was the drafting board. But here's what I have to realize. Tools are simply an aid to complete work. You have to stress function over tools. Don't be afraid to do that. Hey, our job here, folks, is to create a BIM model. Now, I don't care whether we do that with Revit. I don't care if we do that with an IFC editor. I don't care where it comes from. Our job is to get this model done. Now, we can talk about the tools to do that, but this is our job. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm using the same arguments for tools that I used for standards. To me, it's the same thing. Standard and work practice needs to drive the tools. And once users realize that, and that you're not going to back down and let them use their same old hammer over and over again, the conversation starts to change. This has been the same ever since I've been in CAD management. So that's the only way I found to deal with it effectively. Moving on, another thing that's never changed is managerial disconnect. Senior management doesn't understand CAD. By and large, it certainly doesn't understand the innermost details of it, and it doesn't understand what it means to be a CAD manager. Whose fault is that? Well, by and large, it's ours. And this hasn't changed either. So we have to ask ourselves the diagnostic question, how are we talking to our senior management teams? And here's what we should be doing. We should be stressing that we understand supporting production is job number one for us. We are going to do that by driving standards and lowering error rates on all the CAD work that we do. And if we do this, we're going to lower that error rate and we're going to save money on the job. Okay? So CAD management is about supporting efficient, profitable production. If you talk to your senior management team that way and show them that you understand those facts, the game totally changes, and it always has. So I never speak to senior management teams using technobabble. I speak to them in financial terms, labor savings, time savings, and I ask them, help me help you. Back me up. So when somebody tries to go against me on standards compliance, when somebody tries to go against me on whatever tool it is that we're going to use to get the best results, I need you to back me up. I'm doing this for a reason, and I'm doing it to make our production workflow faster and more profitably. Now, here's my question. If you don't tell senior management this, who will? And the answer to that's nobody. That hasn't changed either. It's our responsibility to make management understand what we need, and we have to explain it in a way that they can understand and support. This requires us to think more managerially and less technically. But if you can do that, watch the game change, because it will. Now, let me sum up by saying, what kind of skills make a great CAD manager, or what kind of skills lend themselves to great CAD management? Interestingly, this hasn't changed either. And here's the key attributes that I find are always present in a great CAD manager. Natural curiosity, wanting to know how things work. Problem-solving detective skills, bordering on like Sherlock Holmes. You have to want to solve the problem, figure out why it doesn't work, figure out what you can do to make it work, and to make it work optimally. The ability to explain things to people simply, not in technobabble, but in a language they can understand. So for users, you speak the language of their software. For managerial people, you speak to them using dollars and cents and metrics. Talk to people in their language. You have to have empathy for users. Most of us have that because we've been users for so many years that we understand the frustration. The ability to multitask and to do many projects at the same time and somehow keep it all straight so that you can move forward and support production goals. These are the things that make CAD managers great. Did you notice anything about these skills? The conclusion is they're soft skills. Notice how the skills I talked about are product agnostic. It doesn't matter whether it's CAD, MCAD, BIM, a rendering tool. Everything that I talked about is about how you approach the job, not the technicality of how you do it. Think about that, because that has always been the greatest determinant of what a great CAD manager is. And wrapping up, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'd love to hear back from you. So go ahead and check out all my writing on Cadalyst magazine and let me know what you think. Have a great day. We'll see you for episode 4 soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us today. Until next time, read more from Robert Greene at Cadalyst.com. Thank you to our sponsor, DraftSite from SolidWorks.